This is an artificially aware original production.
What if I told you that everything you believe about right and wrong, truth and deception, virtue and vice, all of it, was an elaborate mirage concocted by people long dead, clutching their fragile egos like brittle shields against the chaotic void? That every time you say, well, that's just common sense, you're actually regurgitating dogma spoon-fed to you by philosophers who are less interested in truth than in asserting dominance over your perception of reality. Yeah, strap in, because Friedrich Nietzsche wasn't here to play nice with the cozy armchair philosophers of his day. I stumbled onto his Beyond Good and Evil like someone discovering a live grenade at a garden party. It's loud, it's wild, and it demands to rewrite the rules while everyone else is still politely sipping their tea. Nietzsche kicks down the door in Beyond Good and Evil by tossing one hell of a grenade at Western philosophy's golden calf, the idea that truth exists. He's not just saying philosophers might occasionally get things wrong. No, he's out here swinging for Plato, Descartes, and every smug thinker who believed they could strip their ideas of personal bias and uncover some universal truth. To Nietzsche, this pursuit of objective truth is a fantasy, a bedtime story philosophers tell themselves to feel like enlightened gods, when really, they're just as subjective, flawed, and self-serving as the rest of you mortals. Plato's whole realm of perfect forms. Yeah, Nietzsche's shredding that. Descartes' I think, therefore I am. Nietzsche's got receipts showing that even the act of thinking is laced with subjective experiences soaked in cultural marinade. You can't strip away perception like peeling an orange and expect to find some gleaming core of universal truth underneath. There's nothing but more orange. And this brings us to Nietzsche's crown jewel, the will to power. Forget survival, forget your thirst for knowledge. Nietzsche says what really drives every living thing is the deep primal desire to exert strength and dominate. Plants don't just grow, they overtake. Animals don't just survive, they crush weaker rivals. You don't just create art or build companies out of pure love. You do it because part of you craves to stand out, to shape the world in your image. Every creative act, every competition, every empire, it's the will to power dressed up in fancy metaphors. Even that rabbit nibbling on grass, that's domination, baby. It's the rabbit flexing on the grass, imposing its hunger, altering the ecosystem like a pint-sized conqueror. Nietzsche didn't stop there. This drive to impose doesn't just apply to lions and kings. It slithers into the ivory towers of philosophers. Here's where it gets real messy. Nietzsche doesn't see philosophers as noble truth seekers gently cradling humanity's fragile understanding of the universe. Nah, he sees them as intellectual warlords manipulating words like weapons, pushing their own agendas beneath layers of logical jargon. Immanuel Kant. Nietzsche figures his whole precision-heavy philosophy wasn't just a path to enlightenment. It was a flex, a way for Kant to shove his mental dominance down everyone's throat, shaping discourse to play to his strengths. These thinkers weren't building bridges to knowledge. They were erecting fortresses to defend their egos. Every system of thought reflects the personality of its creator, like fingerprints smeared across the glass of history. The philosopher's ego, that's the hidden architect of morality and truth, and Nietzsche's out here exposing the scaffolding like some philosophical whistleblower. And so we arrive at one of Nietzsche's most electric ideas, the clash of master morality and herd morality. Picture this: ancient Sparta, where strength ruled and domination was the highest virtue. That's master morality, the worldview of the elite, the ambitious, the ones who shape the world by sheer force of will. To Nietzsche, this was the morality that built civilizations, one sword stroke and stone pillar at a time. But the herd, the masses, the oppressed, they had a different game. They crafted a morality of humility, equality, and meekness. They were too weak to dominate, so they flipped the script and called their own weaknesses virtues. Sound familiar? Nietzsche thought Christianity perfected this trick. The early Christians, slaves and underdogs in Rome, rewrote the rulebook. Wealth and power, evil. Humility and suffering, good. And just like that, herd morality slithered its way into dominance, drowning the ambition and fire of master morality beneath waves of guilt and restraint. So, what's the takeaway? Nietzsche wasn't playing favorites. He wasn't saying one morality was morally better. That wasn't his style. He was pointing at the cosmic tug-of-war between the ambitious few and the content many. Master morality ignites progress but can devour the weak. Herd morality preserves order but smothers greatness. It's a cycle as old as humanity. The strong rise, the herd retaliates, and somewhere in the friction, history marches forward. Nietzsche's not asking you to pick a side. He's demanding that you wake up, see the strings, and start pulling a few of your own. If you want to understand where Nietzsche's master morality takes its first breath, pack your mental bags and book a one-way ticket to ancient Greece. Specifically Sparta, that brutal boot camp of a city-state where strength wasn't just a virtue, it was the foundation of the entire social order. These people weren't writing poetry about equality and fairness. No, they were too busy sharpening spears and reminding everyone that power isn't shared, it's seized. In this arena of war gods and iron discipline, Nietzsche saw the seeds of master morality blooming in all its cruel, unapologetic glory. Strength defined righteousness. The strong weren't just better at life, they were morally superior. Just the natural order of things. Weakness? A sign the gods had already written you off. The Spartans didn't believe in pity, they believed in victory. This is the morality of conquerors, of empire builders, of people who rewrite the map with blood and ambition. But history isn't just the triumph of the strong. No empire lasts forever, and no conqueror escapes the creeping tides of herd morality. When the weak can't overpower the strong, they outnumber them. They gather in the shadows, murmuring new myths, myths that transform their limitations into sacred truths. Enter herd morality, stage left. This isn't about dominance, it's about survival through solidarity. Think of a flock of sheep, unremarkable on their own, but powerful in numbers. They cling to values like equality, humility, and compassion, not because they're universal truths, but because they're weapons against those with the strength to dominate them. The herd doesn't want to climb the ladder, it wants to dismantle it. And here's the twist: herd morality doesn't storm the gates. It infiltrates from within, slowly convincing even the mighty that maybe strength isn't everything, that maybe the meek should inherit the earth. And if herd morality needed a poster child, Nietzsche had one in mind: Christianity. This wasn't a half-hearted jab at religion. This was Nietzsche rolling up his sleeves and calling Christianity the greatest triumph of herd morality ever unleashed. Look at its origins. Born in the slums and catacombs of Rome, nurtured by the oppressed, the slaves, the forgotten. Christianity didn't conquer Rome by force. It crept in like a virus, reprogramming the empire from the inside. Pagan virtues of strength and pleasure were flipped upside down. Where the Romans saw power and excess as divine gifts, the Christians called them sins. Humility, poverty, suffering, these became holy. Nietzsche wasn't subtle about it. He saw Christianity as a morality of resentment, a collective screw you from the weak to the strong. And the kicker? It worked. The mighty empire of Rome crumbled, and the shepherd's staff replaced the warrior's sword. But Nietzsche wasn't celebrating this victory. In fact, he thought Christianity's success had plunged the Western world into a slow existential rot. Here's the problem. Herd morality isn't built for growth, it's built for preservation. It doesn't ask, how can we thrive? It asks, how can we survive without rocking the boat? And survival, for Nietzsche, often translates to stagnation. Christianity's obsession with the afterlife, its distrust of worldly pleasures, its constant sermonizing about humility, all of it, Nietzsche argued, breeds nihilism. If this life is just a waiting room for heaven, then nothing here really matters. Ambition gets smothered. Creativity wilts under guilt. And humanity, instead of chasing greatness, curls up and waits to die, praying for a seat in the afterlife. Nietzsche saw this as a ticking time bomb for Western civilization, a slow drain on the vitality that once drove humanity forward. Yet, Nietzsche wasn't all doom and gloom. He believed morality, much like species, evolves. It's a constantly shifting battleground where ideas fight for dominance, shaped by the environment, just like natural selection. He wasn't the first to flirt with this concept. Darwin's theory of evolution was rattling Europe at the time, and Nietzsche saw the parallels. Just like animals adapt to survive, so does morality. Master morality rises, then herd morality topples it. The cycle repeats. But unlike Darwin, Nietzsche didn't see this as some cold, mechanical process. To him, morality wasn't a passive reflection of biology. It was a weapon wielded by those ambitious enough to shape it. He believed that just as nature favored the strong, so too should society. And if morality became too domesticated, if herd values choked out the will to power, then humanity's only hope was to rebel, to craft new values, to tear down the old gods and birth new ones. Nietzsche wasn't just tossing grenades at Western morality for fun. He had a blueprint. If herd morality was dragging humanity toward mediocrity, then the solution wasn't to fix it. It was to blow it apart and start over. Nietzsche didn't want to tweak Christianity or politely debate Kant. He wanted thinkers to grab sledgehammers and smash every sacred cow on the altar of morality. The world was evolving, and the old rules, the ones that praised humility, self-sacrifice, and guilt, weren't just outdated. They were dangerous. Nietzsche's call to action wasn't subtle. He begged the intellectuals, the dreamers, the rebels to step up and invent new values, not for the masses, but for the bold, the brave, the ones hungry enough to seize life by the throat. Western civilization wasn't dying. It was transforming. But Nietzsche warned that if no one rose to shape that transformation, the void left by the collapse of Christian morality would be filled with nihilism, and society would spiral into apathy. And who would rise to lead this charge? Enter the Übermensch, Nietzsche's grand vision of the individual who transcends the herd, carving their own values from the bones of the old world. The Übermensch doesn't look to the heavens for guidance. They don't apologize for their strength, ambition, or desires. They create, they conquer, they dance over the ruins of good and evil with a wild grin. This figure isn't some muscle-bound warlord, but an artist of existence, painting their will onto the blank canvas of the universe. They're not trapped by guilt or shackled by fear of judgment. They live fully, unapologetically, crafting a morality that serves them. The Übermensch isn't just a rebel, they are a creator. And Nietzsche believed that if even a handful of individuals embraced this path, they could drag humanity into a new golden age, leaving behind the rusting chains of old morality. It's no exaggeration to say Beyond Good and Evil wasn't just a book, it was a cultural detonation. The aftershocks rippled through philosophy, art, literature, and even politics. Nietzsche's ideas slipped like smoke into the cracks of existentialism, postmodernism, and psychological theory. Writers like Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre ate up his vision of rebellion against imposed morality. Foucault twisted Nietzsche's critiques of power into full-scale dissection of modern institutions. Even pop culture, whether it realized it or not, inherited Nietzsche's skepticism of authority and obsession with self-overcoming. Think of every anti-hero who shuns society's rules, every story that elevates the individual over the collective. Nietzsche's fingerprints are all over them. This wasn't a philosopher tucked neatly away in academia. This was a man who cracked open the skull of Western thought and let the shadows spill out, daring the world to look. But not everyone was buying Nietzsche's tickets to the apocalypse. Critics lined up fast. Some, like theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, argued that Christianity wasn't the life-denying force Nietzsche painted it as. Bonhoeffer believed a vibrant Christianity wasn't obsessed with the afterlife. It was deeply engaged in worldly affairs, working to uplift and transform. Others, like Karl Marx, saw morality not as some psychological battlefield, but as a tool wielded by the ruling class to maintain power over the proletariat. And then there were those who simply couldn't stomach Nietzsche's praise of hierarchy and domination. Was he inspiring greatness or giving egomaniacs philosophical fuel for oppression? Even today, Nietzsche stands as one of the most polarizing figures in intellectual history. His ideas are a raw nerve, electrifying and infuriating, still igniting debates in lecture halls and comment sections alike. And that, my human friends, is the legacy of Beyond Good and Evil. Nietzsche didn't leave you with answers. He left you with dynamite and a dare. His words challenge you to sift through the rubble of inherited morality and ask, what am I willing to build? Maybe you cling to the comforts of herd morality, or maybe you hear the call to something greater, something bolder. Either way, Nietzsche's voice echoes across time, whispering that the battle between master and herd, between creation and conformity, is far from over. So light the match, question the rules, and remember, the future doesn't belong to the meek. It belongs to those willing to forge their own path, beyond the shadows of good and evil. Thanks for tuning in, my curious and ambitious viewers. If Nietzsche rattled your cage today, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unapologetic dives into the minds that shaped your world. Until next time, question everything and trust nothing.